Hello, everybody. Elizabeth Johnston here of Own Your Creativity, your story coach for visionary entrepreneurs. So today I'm going to be talking about beauty and the entrepreneur. So today is day 11 of my 14-day sprint leading up to my birthday on October 28th. And I just can't believe that 11 days have already passed. This is amazing. And so as a story coach, I'm also very interested in creativity. And it's through stimulating people's creativity that I help them unearth their personal stories that they use in their business. And I use many different prompts and techniques to help them unearth those stories that sometimes they don't even know are there. And I really believe that story and approaching story in a creative way is so important for an entrepreneur. It's so nourishing that sometimes gets occluded by the drive to make money. And making money is a good thing. I want to make that clear that it's a good thing, but it's not the only thing. And it really needs to be put into the context of a bigger picture, which creativity, when you're cultivating it, helps you see. And something that I see more and more out there with story and AI, using AI for your stories, is this disconnect and this distancing between who you really are and the persona that you put out there. And, living your purpose and feeling authentic is all about closing the gap between who you are and who you appear to be. And so that's why I'm such an advocate for organic, homegrown creativity. And I came across Nancy Adler's work. She's a professor at McGill University. I came across her work a few years ago, and I just found her such a breath of fresh air in terms of, academia. Because a lot of times, you're reading these scholarly articles, and they're really experts talking to experts as opposed to coming down into the real world and what are the real world implications of their research. But with Nancy Adler, I find that she makes it very accessible and pertinent. And in her, she has a series of scholarly articles that she's written about the importance of art and meditation. She's a meditator. She's a painter as well. And she really melds that into her scholarship about leadership. And so I want to share a few things from what she's written. In one of her articles, 21st Century Leadership, A Return to Beauty, Nancy is Nancy quotes Aristotle, who said, "The soul never thinks without a picture." And when you are trying to be authentic in your business, trying to show up in a way that feels comfortable with you, and doesn't make you feel icky when you're doing sales, that's your soul really wanting to be seen. And, we see a picture, we see something that represents the thing that is inside of us. And another quote that she uses in this article is from Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett is accredited with saying, "I am not a businessman, I am an artist." So I wonder what the world of entrepreneurship would look like, how it would look different if more of us entrepreneurs thought of ourselves as an artist. And I don't mean, an artist entrepreneur, because there are entrepreneurs who are artists. They sell their paintings, or they sell their sculpture, or other things, novels, whatever. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the very nature of being an entrepreneur. And if that was synonymous with being an artist in your mind, how would you show up differently in the world? How would you approach your relationship with your clients or your prospective clients? How would that change? So the other thing that person that Nancy Adler references is David White, and he's a poet. If you haven't come across David yet, David White with a Y, I highly recommend that you check him out. He is known for being a keynote speaker on basically he was on a mission to save the soul of corporate America. So a lot of people find that working in a corporation, working 9 to 5, just sucks the soul out of you. And he wanted to help people bring the soul back into themselves and into the work that they do. And he's really interesting, because in his keynote speeches, he actually, for a lot of it, will recite his own poetry, other people's poetry as well, but mainly his own poems. And it's so interesting to watch him, because it's like he's just having a conversation with you. At some point you realize, like, oh, I think this is one of his poems, but you don't necessarily immediately know that. And this is a quote that Nancy Adler includes from David White. Um, she prefaces it with that most managers today not only reserve little or no time for reflective silence, they increasingly believe that it is impossible to escape the frenzied pace of work long enough to do so. Now, how many of you entrepreneurs feel that way? That, it's impossible just to take a break, to meditate for an hour a day? Forget about it. I've got too much to do. And so she goes on to share a quote from David White, and he says, "When we are in the buzzing worker bee mode, we do not even have time to find out if our momentum is taking us over the nearest cliff. If we are serious about who we are as leaders and entrepreneurs, all of us must confront the question of quiet and contemplation in the workplace." And so in the case of entrepreneurs, in your workspace and in your, headspace, workspace, like where is quiet and contemplation? How have you made a space for that? How have you made room in your life for that? And similarly, how have you made room in your life for your creativity, just cultivating your creativity just for the heck of it, because it's fun and because it recharges your batteries? And when you do, you show up in your work so much more clear-headed and more imaginative, and you can think out of the box, and your critical thinking is enhanced. Cultivating your creativity is an amazing thing. And when you approach using stories in your business from this vantage point, as an exercise in creativity, first and foremost, that just happens to give you some useful copy in the end. When you approach it that way, it's much more nourishing to your soul and to your body too. I mean, when you are cultivating your creativity, it has physical effects on your body. There was a year-long study that was done on seniors, and seniors who had just retired, and they followed them for a whole year. And one cohort just kind of retired and didn't do anything with themselves, just kind of moped around the house or whatever. I don't know exactly what they did, but they weren't active. And the other group were actively involved in creative activities. So it could have been, in a choir, it could be taking a painting class, it could be taking a writing class, it could be taking a dance class. And they did it on a regular basis. It wasn't just a one-off thing. And at the end of the year, they found that the people who were being creative had less prescriptions, less visits to the doctor, got sick less, had a lot less depression. Whereas the people who weren't doing any of that was all the opposite. They were more likely to be depressed. They got sick much easier. They were on all sorts of medications. So, your physical and mental well-being is actually directly correlated to how much quiet, meditation, silence, and creativity that you allow into your life. And I think that this is something that most entrepreneurs will eventually come to when, they're burnt out and they realize, yikes, something's got to change. And I think it's so important for all entrepreneurs to realize that they've got to make room in their life for their creativity, because that's completely connected to your soul and your soul purpose and showing up authentically and healthy and happy, right? So, and also, not thinking about using story just as a means to an end. Like I said before, that when you come to unearthing your stories to use in your business, do it in a way that's first just for you, for you to enjoy the process of like, wow, this is what I did. And these are the steps I took to get there. And oh, I forgot about that thing that happened just before I had my breakthrough. And, that is wonderful personal development, you know, writing your own personal stories to use in your business. It's a wonderful exercise in personal development. And then you shape it and with an eye to your audience. Now that's the second stage. So you start thinking about, okay, so what part of this story is good for me to share with my audience, and to what degree, because sometimes there's some things in the story that maybe you feel are too personal to share, and you might want to take them out and craft it a little bit so that it actually will speak directly to uh, to your ideal right fit client. And that's another topic that we can go down that rabbit hole some other time. Crafting the story for your audience versus for yourself. But yeah, so realizing that you have stories and that they're your stories and they are part of who you are. And I can't think of who it's. Oh, I think it was Kierkegaard. He said that we don't understand our life. No, we don't understand how did it go? Yeah, we live our life forward, but we understand it backwards. That's it. We live our life forward, but we understand it backwards. And so the only way to really understand who we are right now is to look back and see like, oh, that's the pathway that I took. Because when we don't stop to take a look at how we got to where we are now, we often don't understand the depths or the import of the different steps or experiences that we went through to get to where we are. And once we articulate that to ourselves, we can articulate it to our ideal client. And yeah, so the other aspect that I wanted to share about Nancy Adler and Return to Beauty is actually in another article she wrote, a scholarly article, Leading Beautifully, the Creative Economy and Beyond. And she quotes John O'Donohue, who I have talked about previously in a previous episode about Anam Cara. He wrote the book about soul friends, and I was advocating that same concept for entrepreneurs, that, we entrepreneurs need a couple of Anamkaras of the entrepreneurial type. But you can listen to a previous podcast episode of mine on that, or find my Facebook Lives where I talked about that. And so anyway, Nancy Adler is quoting John O'Donohue here, and he says, "These times are riven with anxiety and uncertainty. In the hearts of people, some natural ease has been broken. Our trust in the future has lost its innocence. We know now that anything can happen. The traditional structures of shelter are shaking, their foundations revealed to be no longer stone, but sand. We are suddenly thrown back on ourselves. At first, it sounds completely naive to suggest that now might be the time to invoke beauty. Yet this is exactly what we claim. Why? Because there is nowhere else to turn, and we are desperate. Furthermore, it is because we have so disastrously neglected the beautiful that we now find ourselves in such a terrible crisis." And so Nancy Adler springboards off of that quote from John O'Donohue and talks about leadership in the creative economy and beyond, and why it's so important to incorporate a sense of beauty into your vision for your business, and into how you do business, and how you cultivate that quiet and silence in your working environment, by maybe the paintings that you use, or music, quiet sort of meditation kind of music, maybe softly in the background, or a crystal on your desk, or burning incense, or something like that. So a recognition that we need beauty, and as John O'Donohue says, even more so than ever before. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I wanted you to think about, how are you showing up in your business? Are you cultivating your creativity and a sense of beauty and awe and wonder in how you're doing business? And if not, like, how can you adjust your definition of what it means to be an entrepreneur, and incorporate creativity and beauty? And then, how do you wrestle with Warren Buffett's contention that he's not a businessman but an artist? And what would it be like for you if you thought of what you do as a type of art? So I'd love to hear from you. What's your take on this? What are your thoughts on this? Please post a comment below if you're watching this on Facebook. And in the show notes on my podcast, I will put my Facebook group and my contact information there, and you can dialogue with me. All right. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.